from his deathbed and not being able to move to running and participating in, Kevin, was it 10 or 12 races last year?
Yeah, 10 Spartan races.
10 Spartan races. How does that happen? And how does someone go from being on almost a deathbed to running 10 to 12 Spartan races in 1 year? Today, we are going to talk to Kevin Brewer, and he is going to tell us his story and where he came from. He was in the military, then he evolved to other things. So, welcome, Kevin, to a Mindset Medicine podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
So, you know what I'd love to start with? Let's just start with the moment that everything kind of fell apart for you. And then let's sort of dig ourselves out of that and then come to today. So, my understanding is that you have endured
Yep.
years of undiagnosed pain. So, can you tell me about where all of this started? And maybe it's even further in your past than that. But why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, it was actually shortly after I got back from Afghanistan. Well, on my way back from Afghanistan, I had a massive sinus infection. So, like the whole left side of my face and half the right side of my face was completely filled with infection. I got sick with like the swine flu and all this other stuff. So when and I had like a hernia that got needed to be repaired. So I had all kinds of things going wrong when I came back from Afghanistan with the Navy. And on my kind of them being on the mend from that, I was on this antibiotic that I didn't know caused ligament and tendon damage. I also have psoriasis that turned into psoriatic arthritis that I didn't know about. I knew about the psoriasis, but not the psoriatic arthritis. That causes obviously ligament damage and stuff. So I had all that going on, and I wasn't quite back to health. So I was in the gym either way, anyway, and I was lifting, and I felt something kind of pop up in this area, in my upper neck back area, and being in my early 20s, I thought, oh, I'm invincible. So I was like, I should probably stop lifting weights. I was smart enough to do that. But then I went and played basketball instead. So that kind of started it. That night, I ended up waking up, my heart racing, going all crazy, and it just kept waking me up. So I eventually went into the hospital to get that checked out, make sure it wasn't like a heart attack or something. And from that point on, it just never stopped. I just kept getting, progressively worse every year. Went from being somebody who was like active all the time in sports growing up, obviously being in the military, and I couldn't do anything. Every time I tried to do anything physical, I would just have all these pains, and it would just get progressively worse and worse and worse. And the more I did, the worse it got. And I just had to fight tooth and nail, doctor after doctor, system after system, just to like get out of that. So
So how did you manage to get out of that? Because it's really hard when you find that there are doctors who are just sort of moving you from one to the next because they, maybe, well, why don't you try this specialist? And then why don't you try this kind of specialist?
yeah,
So how did you move out of that?
well, it was a very slow process at first. So at first, I trusted the medical system, and I just kept going back and back and back. And they would say, "Hey, try this medication, try that medication, do this, do that, rest, do that, whatever." And the more that didn't work, I'd go back, and then eventually it built up this thing. They go, "Well, so you keep coming back. You didn't have all these problems before you went to Afghanistan, but now you got back from Afghanistan. You're coming in all the time. So it must be PTSD." So then I got labeled with that. And then it's like, okay, well, that's not true, but also it's not helping me with anything else because we're not treating the problem. So
Yeah.
then I just kept fighting that. And then I just kept going back and forth. Sometimes I'd find a doctor that was willing to listen. Sometimes I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I just had to keep going. Like I said, different doctor, different specialists. They tried this, tried that. I saw a couple orthopedists. I saw, uh, was that the vein doctor? I can't remember the name of it now, but um, I saw neurologists, neurosurgeons, like the whole gambit of people, psychiatry, all that stuff. Like nobody would help me. So eventually I got out of the military and then the VA system. I just went to my civilian doctors and said, hey, nobody really listened to me. I know I have all these like chest and heart symptoms, but I usually start feeling it in my back first. and then it kind of goes to the front into the chest. So I was like, is there a way we kind of get that? So I started down the path of looking into my back, and for a little while that helped. Getting some treatments on my back, seeing spine, what they call anesthesiologist, not the anesthesiologist, pain medicine. That's what said the pain medicine guys, and they got me into chiropractic, and that helped for quite a while. Just getting cracked, but I had to go all the time, and then eventually insurance ran out for that because they only cover so much. So then it just again progressively got worse and worse and worse. Partly because they weren't actually treating the problem.
Yes.
So eventually they just stopped helping. I just stopped working, and then my nervous system just started shutting down.
So, at what point did you actually say, okay, this is enough? I have to find a solution for this. I can't keep it getting passed around. I
Yeah.
can't keep getting sort of these very shallow solutions, which are like a band-aid, right? So, at
Yeah.
what point did you say, I've had enough and I'm going to fix this?
Yeah, I was in my closet one day, and finally, after having yet another, I was having multiple daily panic attacks, and I just laid there and I said, "I'm just gonna die. I'm just gonna lay here and die." And I was laying there, and I said, "God, I know, I don't do this very much. I know I don't go to church. I don't do all that stuff. But if you let me live through this, I'll figure this out." And I lived through it. So I just started, okay, well, my background's in intelligence analysis. I mean, I can look at two different things and see if they're the same or not. So I just started saying, okay, well, I guess I got to figure this out myself. I just started looking at my own MRIs, started getting online, checking my MRI against stuff online, and eventually got my own diagnosis and started going to, arguing with doctors that way, and finally found a doctor in Colorado that does stem cell therapy for cervical instability, and started getting treatments for that, and that ended up being what it was. And yeah, I got on a rapid path of growth after that. So
Isn't it amazing how you actually get to the point where you kind of you get to the end, right? You get to the end of your rope and you finally sit back, and I have found is that when you finally just, I don't want to say give up, but it's like you give up and give in at the same time and
yeah,
say, I'm literally at the bottom. So I've got to figure this out because there's no one coming to save me. There's no one coming to help me. I now have to figure this out.
yeah,
So, and I think that that's when you actually start building yourself back out of that hole that you feel like you're trapped in because
yeah.
you keep relying on everyone else to find that solution for us. So tell me then, um, at what point did you realize that you could do this now and you could figure out a way to get yourself help? And then what happened from there? How did your mindset start shifting? Because have you found in your life, and I know that I have, is that once you have that mindset shift, like your body tends to shift along with it a little bit over time, day over
Yeah.
day. You almost start your whole being starts to shift. Did you notice that?
Yeah, so I actually ended up coming across right around that time, sports performance psychology, kind of mental performance stuff. Guys like Brian Kane, Lauren Johnson, Jocko Willing, people like that.
Hmm.
And I just started diving hard into that. And that started me down a path of, at this point, I'd gotten overweight. I was 240 plus pounds, just so, obese and everything. So I just said, all right, well, let me take away some of these. First off, I can control my weight, so let me do that. So I started, controlling that, getting that under control, got my diet and all that stuff. Took away excuses from doctors that kept trying to say, this or that. Well, you can't blame it on this anymore, and just said, all right, let me control what I can control. And then once I found the solution, got to that, I started going, okay, well, I had to use my mindset to go, I know this is whatever I'm going to do is going to cause pain. My brain's stuck in this cycle of thinking everything's killing it.
Hmm.
So I have to push and see what I can do and then tell myself, okay, it's going to cause problems. Is this worse than it's ever been? If not, then I can keep going. And then I just had to rebuild that cycle within my brain to go, okay, this is safe. It's okay. and just take some time. But once you get going, it happens more rapidly as you go. So that's like all mental though. But that part you have to like overcome that.
It's true. And I love that you said that because we do have this patterning, right? That we
Yeah.
get used to, and we have a patterning of telling ourselves, "Well, I can't do that." Right? I tried it before. I reached my limit. It was too
Hmm.
painful. But I think like you did, when you come back to it and you say, no, I think I need to look at this again and I need to push myself a little bit more just to see where my limits really are, because they're
Yeah.
usually not where we think they are. They're usually much further along.
Yeah.
Um, so you started on this new path then of weight loss and a new high performance type of mindset to keep you
Hmm.
moving forward. So where did where did that bring you? And I do have a question about when you were in the military and
Hmm.
now you're back in high performance, and I have followed Jocko many years now. Did you find that there was any similarities in the type of mindset that you would have to have in order to come back out now from this hole that you've been in? Did you see that there was, because I can't imagine that when you were in Afghanistan, that was an easy thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Day in, day out.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's ultimately the more you get told you don't, there's nothing wrong with you, right? Like the more you get kind of dismissed, it does take a toll on you after a while. So you start really playing that victim mentality, and then that's really got I kind of got stuck in that. And I think at first it was fine. I could fight against it, but the more I heard it, sometimes like that, I'd have like cycles within there where it's like I just stop. I just kind of give up on trying to figure it out. It's been 13 years I went dealing with this, so I'd have a couple months here and there. I was like, I feel like it's pretty good. And eventually, something hit me again. I'm like, nah, I can't be a victim. Whatever. Let me keep trying. Let me go keep doing these cycles. So I think that was the biggest thing is like just recognizing that whenever I'd slip back into that victim mentality or like like hey, I'm letting it control me. I'm letting it define me. Which is when I was in the military. I have this confidence. Nothing really bothered you. Because you always knew what the next step was, the new next path was. And with this, sometimes, especially when it's an unknown,
Mm,
it's hard to know what the next step is, or because you're like, well, I don't know what else I can do. So
yeah,
it's like getting past that and just going, okay, well, let me get back into problem solving mode. It's like, well, I may not know the answer, but what's the next step I can take
yeah.
that might move me forward? And if it doesn't, then okay, let's just then go to the next one.
Isn't it interesting? I've noticed that in order to overcome any hurdle, like you said, where you were caught in this, it's like being caught in a trap for 13 years, right? It's like
Yeah.
this pattern that you just can't seem to get out of. But you said something really important, which is when you have something, like you have an action to take, or you have
Hmm.
something to look forward to, or you have a task that you need to do, that's, I think, what starts to bring you forward, right? You
Yeah.
actually have, like you said, when you were you were in the Navy, I believe it was, right? Not the Army, the Navy.
Yeah.
When you were in the Navy, you knew what the next expected task would be. And so it's
Yep.
like you almost have to recreate that in order, when you are resilient, that I think that that's what it is. You need to have the next goal in mind that you need to get to. And whether that's a phone call to the next person, or whether that's, just getting up and, okay, I need to go to the store today, or it's that next thing that you need to figure out what to achieve, that I think is what really helps bringing a person out of that space where they feel stuck and or a victim. I've been
Yep.
there as well after I had open heart surgery, right? I felt like I was a victim. Why did this have to happen to me? Why
Yeah.
did this have to happen to me at such a young age? But when you can get to the point where you say, well, I've had enough, I'm not a victim anymore, and you just have to keep remembering that you've got to put that next action and have it ready for yourself for the following day.
Yeah.
Because if you have nothing to look forward to, that's a problem.
Yeah. For sure.
So how then? do you go from that state of, okay, you're pulling yourself out to now you're doing Spartan races?
So I guess that's part of it is having that next goal, right? So for me, it was like I knew I wanted to get better. I knew I wanted to get back to being athletic and physical. That was always who I was at my core. So I went through this program called Heroic coaching program, and one of the things that the kind of the end step for that is doing a Spartan race. And I had kind of looked into something like that before anyway, so and I was always excited and kind of looking into it. But this kind of gave me that motivation. And at the time, I wasn't quite ready to do it, and I was supposed to do one in December 22, I think it was, with them. And the night before, my body just shut down again and just kind of went crazy, and I just couldn't get to the starting line. So then I was like even more determined, like, no, I'm going to get to the starting line.
Do
I'm
you think
going
that
to do
was
one.
psychological?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Mm,
So I didn't understand at that point still. I was still kind of working through the mind-body connection. And I had seen some bad news about some, or kind of a weird thing in my medical chart. And it kind of like put my body in this loop of like protection mode. And it
mm,
just like messed my heart rate up. I had started having pain in my hip again. So there was like this weird connection my body just kind of associated with itself. And since then, I've been able to stop it, and like I know what it is now, and I can move through it. But it's just that mind-body connection where it's like it's associated a couple different movements and patterns that it's like that it don't make sense. But
yes,
I know what it is now because it's that part is psychological. Um, so now I can just overcome it, and move past it, and not and just ignore it basically. So, but yeah, so I was like, I'm determined. I'm going to make this. I'm going to do it. So September 23, I did my first one, and after I did that one, I was like, I'm gonna do more. I gotta prove myself. So then so 24, my goal really was just to do all three distances throughout the year, and eventually I got to a point where I just like I was like, well, I'm gonna just keep doing more. I just kept signing up and just doing more and more, and yeah, I just now I'm just in love with them because it gives me that something else to do to kind of like look forward to
sure.
keep progressing towards. So
Let's go back to your first race.
yeah,
Because I can't imagine that that was an easy race. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but while I used to do distance running when I was much, much younger, and you're basically talking to yourself the entire time to keep yourself going, especially when the distances get further and further.
yeah.
How difficult was that first race for you? And what were you having to say to yourself in order to get through it? Because you do have a fear, don't you? Is that, am
Yeah.
I hurting something? Am I going to be okay? And you've got those pre-thoughts before you even get to the start line. And then you've got the thoughts during the race. And then you have your thoughts after the race. So walk me through what all that looked like for you.
I think leading up to it was actually the hardest part because I'd had that initial failure of not being able to do the one in December. I was my whole goal was like I'm just freaked out about being able to start. So I had to like that night before I didn't get much sleep. I was just like just going through this is like my brain was just chugging through all this garbage really. So I had to like really be on top of my mental game at that point. Just kept telling myself like no, you'll be fine. Just like really talk to myself more than I'm listening to myself.
Mhm.
And just keep just pushing it aside. Like it kept wanting to come back. I had to push it aside. It was a constant battle. So that morning it was actually not too bad. I ended up running it with a friend of mine from work, and his he is much better shape than I was at the time. And I was like, hey, if you want to run ahead, fine. If not, like hang back, I don't care. He's like, nah, man, we're gonna do this together. So I was like, okay.
That's
So I
great.
was like, look, if I could just get to that starting line and they say go and I start and I get out of it, I was like, that's going to be a win for me. That's all I cared about. I just wanted to be able to start it. I was like, if I can start it, I could probably find a way to finish it, even if I'm, walking it, crawl through the finish, whatever it is. Like, I can get to the end. So starting it was the big, big, big point for me. And then after that, it was just like, he just kept pushing me and just like, hey, let's keep going. And, every obstacle I would do, I would complete it and it would just get more and more confidence and going like, yeah, I can do this. I just kept thinking that like, hey, if I can just get to that next obstacle, let me complete that one. And then just kept doing that. Just just one at a time. And eventually we got to the end.
And then you almost say to yourself, like, look, we did it.
Yeah.
We survived. We didn't die. We actually
Yep.
survived. Do you think that having someone with you made a difference?
I definitely, especially on that first one. Uh, I it probably would have been a little bit tougher. But yeah, I mean, it actually made it just more enjoyable because then I can talk to him. I can, and he didn't know all my story, so like we had time to kind of talk about my background and story, and kind of why this was a big deal for me. So I think that also helped me too, to just kind of get that out and just be like, hey, this is why it's such a big deal for me to do this.
So let's move now more toward the present day. So what have you been doing, and how do you feel like you are a different person now than you were? Are you or do you still have some of those same feelings and ideas? Do you feel like you've completely changed? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so I had completely lost my confidence. Um, so that was a big change for me because I was always a pretty confident person. But when you're physically incapable of doing things, like it's really hard to be confident in yourself. So as I've gained back my physical strength, I've had to like relearn how to be confident. And so that was like was a big change for me again, just kind of just recognizing first off that that's what part of the problem was. And then just start building back from there and go, okay, well, what can I do? So yeah, I've changed significantly, just like just body composition, structure, mental capacity, what I'm focused on, like how my thoughts go, I'm just a really different person now, like just much more versed in all this stuff. I had just just the way I look at life and food and everything else, like everything really just has completely changed because now I see how intricately they all matter.
Let's actually go into that a little bit. For anyone who is listening who has gone through something really, really hard,
Mhm.
how do you rebuild your confidence? How do you recall rebuilding it, like block by block by block? How did you figure out to do that?
Uh, well, one of the things, Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson actually were big helps on that, unbeknownst to them, of course, but because they had, I think that's actually how I recognized that it was my lack of confidence, was I heard them talk about how being physically capable leads to being more confident just by nature. And then I realized that that was it. Like that's why I was so unconfident because I felt useless to my family. I couldn't protect them if somebody came, so like I felt like I was like not doing my job as a man, being, the husband and father and stuff. So it just understanding that that's what was the connection was a big help for me. Just to go, okay, well, if I'm not physically capable, how else can I still do my job then? So
Mhm.
just okay, well, I can build the financial, or I can just be there to support and do all these different things. Like find different ways to be able to identify things that I'm doing still that are within my capacity and still
Right.
capable and still being that protective provider. And it may not be the same way I envisioned it, but just recognizing that it could be different.
So it's
So
almost
that
like
was
that. It's just like saying, what do I have control over?
yeah,
And let me get it back, right?
yeah,
That one thing that I do have control right now that I can do.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was a huge part of it. And then just now getting my physical capacity back just makes it even a bigger deal for me. But again, that was under my control. Like I realized that the way I treated my body and my diet and everything else was a huge contributing factor to the degradation of my body and my mind. So
Mhm.
now that I say, okay, well, I can control that, I have the ability to overcome that. I can choose better on a regular basis, and nobody
How
can take that from me.
how have you changed your diet in the last, would you say, I don't know, 1 to 2 years? What have you been doing increasingly so that you feel like you are better? Because I think that you can feel when your body feels healthy.
For sure, yeah. Um, the big thing was first getting I had a kind of a I call it sugar addiction, but just the sweets and everything were everywhere at work and everything. So I just kind of got that under control first, and then I slowly tried different things. I didn't fully do any crash diets per se, but I tried different dietary lifestyles, I call them, and then modified it to be something that I feel comfortable with, that I feel the best with. So, like I said, first it was getting my sugar cravings under control, then it was portion control, then I tried intermittent fasting for a long time. And then I did, you heard of Dr. Stephen Gundry and the Plant Paradox?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, so I tried that for a bit and I didn't mind that. I lost quite a bit of weight on that. And then I ended up trying the carnivore diet for a little bit. And I like aspects of both of those, so I kind of just combined both those. I do a lot of heavy animal-based diet with like salads and fruits and stuff, so that's kind of where I am now. I've noticed that when I do that, I feel better. If I have too much sweet stuff, my joints start hurting again, so I just avoid them, you know. So it's like, okay, you know, flour, things like that. So I can do fruit, I can do a lot of protein, and just kind of go with that.
Isn't it amazing? And this is what I've noticed over the last quite a few years is food really does have a huge impact on how we feel, how we think, how we move.
Yeah,
It's everything, how we sleep, how we react to
yeah,
other people, right? Our temperament. I think everything counts. And we also
yeah,
know when we've done too much of something, like, there's holidays.
yep.
Have you noticed that, for example, over Christmas, if you go back and you start eating too many flour-based things or sugar, about a week later, you're like, oh God, I feel horrible. And then it's like you have to reverse all of it again.
Yeah, for sure. And at first, I think that was like one of the biggest hurdles for me was trying to figure out how to do that, eat the way I want to eat around other people. Because I think that's a huge psychological thing. People think like, oh, I have to fit in almost.
Mm,
So I just started getting comfortable saying like, you know what, I'm going to eat the way I want to eat. I don't care because I have to do it for my health.
yes.
So I would just tell people, I would just say, hey, I'm here. Like if I'd go out with people or whatever, and there was nothing on the menu I don't want to eat, I felt comfortable eating. I would just say, hey, I'm here for the experience with
Mm,
you. You can eat whatever you want, no judgment. I don't care. I'm going to eat the way I need to eat for my body. You do what you do for yours. And then I'm just going to be here for the socialization of this because that's what I'm here for.
yeah,
And then eventually people just got okay with that. And I'd go back for family events that I'd say, hey, I'm going to go buy my own food because I know I buy, all this organic stuff. I'm not expecting you to pay for it. I go buy myself. All I ask is you let me borrow your kitchen, your stove for a couple minutes so I can cook my own food. Again, I'm here for the socialization. I don't expect you to pay for me. I just ask for this time so I can cook my own food. And it was never a problem after that. People just like started to understand. They go, okay, this is just the way Kevin is. That's fine.
yeah.
And they just got used to it, and I got used to it. Really, it was big me, the mental side of just going like, hey, I can be okay with just voicing how I have to conduct my body, and if you're not okay with that, then that's your problem, not mine,
Yes. Hmm.
because you don't have to live with my pain.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so where are you today now? At what point are you at? And then where, looking forward, when we talk about like that next goal and the next action, where do you hope to be? So where are you now and where do you hope to be?
I'm doing a lot better now. I'm This year I'm actually doing the age group uh, competitive side for the sport, and I'm going to try that for the first time. I'm gonna try to medal for real, like actually get on the podium, being able to get that. So that's where I am now. I'm just pushing myself to see, hey, what can I actually do? Like you said, where is that limit? Like I don't know where it is yet. So
Yes.
I'm just gonna keep going.
That's awesome. And I love the fact you just said that. Like just keep searching for the next limit, right?
Yeah,
Um, and I talk about that a lot where we think that I think a lot of people just live in a box that they've
yeah,
created, right? There's this ceiling, there's a floor, there's sides, and we just get stuck in it. But when you realize you put yourself in that box, you can actually just keep going and keep smashing through that ceiling and create a bigger box and like just keep going.
right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap this up, what is a question that you would like me to have asked you? And How would you like to leave this now as you move into the future, knowing what you know now, knowing everything that you've been through? Where do you see yourself going? And what's one question that I haven't asked you yet?
Hmm. One question you haven't asked me. That's a tough one. Uh, Maybe one thing that you haven't asked me that I think a lot of people overlook is like, so I've been married. I got married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married for a long time. Is how hard is it on the people that are going through it with you that aren't feeling the pain? You know, so I think my wife may have had it harder than I did because she sees me going from the person that she watched, you know, first started dating in high school, be this, you know, athletic guy, this guy who joined the military, be there for his family, you know, go through all this stuff and be there for her all through all these different things. Then she had to be basically my caretaker,
Right.
where I effectively became almost invalid, you know, where it's like I can't even imagine what she had to go through. So I think that's a huge component too that people overlook with your struggle is the people who love you and around you, how
Mhm.
much they are going through too, especially when
And
they
how
can't
helpless,
help.
yeah, how
Yeah,
helpless they feel because there's nothing they can actually do to make you feel better, right?
yeah. And she went through a lot of those doctor's appointments with me too. We had one neurosurgeon that I went to, and he didn't even look at my scans. He literally just goes, "Oh, you're in the military. It must be PTSD."
Ah,
And
yes.
she got pissed.
Mm,
And I was like, I was used to it, but she was like, she wasn't like she hadn't seen them actually say that to me like that, and she got really mad and went off on him. And I was like, hey, it's okay, like that's just how they are. I'll just go to the next one, you know. So like just seeing how that affected her, and even and again how I got so used to it, you know. Like so, I think that's a component a lot of people overlook is what the other people are going through too. Even if they're not feeling your pain, they're going through something else.
right. Yep. So, where are you going next? What's your next? What's the next chapter for you?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep going down this path. I'm going to start. I'm gonna dive into some Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Just try that out, and just I'm just gonna keep pushing limits. And you know, I think a lot of people get this mindset of uh, you can't keep doing things as you get older. But I've never believed that. And you know, you look at some of these, especially the martial artists. You know, like how pliable and movable, you know, how strong they are still in their 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, and I'm like, that's 100% our culture has made us believe that that's a thing, but it's not.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense by nature. So I'm just going to keep proving that wrong and just showing that, hey, what's possible. I'm just going to keep going.
Well, I think that's the perfect place to stop. I think that that is a message as we go forward, get older, just keep going. Like don't stop because you think that that's what's expected at your age, right? Age is just a
Right.
number,
Yep.
and it's really just keep your body healthy, keep your mindset healthy, and
Yep.
everything else will fall in place.
Yep. 100%.
Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation with you. I'm glad that my listeners got to get to know you a little bit. If someone wanted to learn more about you, where should they find you?
The best place right now is just hit me up on Instagram at Coach Kevin Brewer. My website's getting rebuilt, so that'll be up here for too long, but right now it's down.
Perfect. All right. So at Coach Kevin Brewer, thank you again. And to everyone listening, if you found this helpful and you think that there's someone who needed to listen or needs to listen to this message, needs a little bit of inspiration going forward, share this. Write a comment. Tell us what you think. If there's any questions that you have, hit us up. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Mindset Medicine. Remember, every step you take toward building a resilient mindset and creating harmony in your life will get you closer to your dreams and that transformation that you've been looking for. If today's episode hit home for you, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback is our fuel. Spread the love. Share this podcast with friends and family. Tag me on Instagram at Catherine Lukedu Coaching. And if you're looking for more tips and resources, head over to CatherineLukeduCoaching.com. Stay connected, stay inspired, and keep living your very best life with harmony and purpose. And until next time, my friends, live boldly with purpose.